night. It's better than one more fight. You fight your tears, they weigh you down. Your knuckles bleed on the ground. I wanted you to hear me. We screamed our lungs out on the street. You took us far, we rode beneath the stars. Two sad kids finding relief. Bad kids will waste our days. Sad kids will waste away with our blood on the pavement, with our still shaking hands. Oh, bad kids will waste our days. Oh, sad kids will waste away.
Welcome, everyone. We are on episode 6 of the Sijlent podcast. It is May 1st. Rent is
May.
due. It's a new month. It's a new, not a new season. It's a new chapter in the Sijlent podcast. Usually on the show, my guests are either someone I'm pretty familiar with or I've worked with before. But today we have a relatively unknown. Would you like to do the honors or?
I can introduce myself.
Sure.
My name is Mae. Mae Byrd is my stage name, Byrd.
Yeah.
And I am about to graduate from college, and I'm an artist. I've been an artist for a really long time.
Yeah, you and I have met like kind of just very suddenly.
Yes.
through everything. I feel like you fit, like we talked about this before the show, but kind of the stereotype of bartenders that I've seen a lot.
The whole psychology major trope, along with the bartending, kind of fits because I genuinely do listen to everybody and we talk about feelings and problems a lot. There's some crazy people that show up.
Oh, I can only imagine.
Yeah. There's a lot of, we had to ban this one guy because I was doing he's done a lot of stuff like this, but I was doing this like a swimming dance motion, like the scuba, and he was like, you know what, if you keep dancing like that, I'm going to have to bring a stripper pole in here for you. And I was like, what, so you can dance on it? He was like, no, for you. And I was like, ugh. So that guy's gone. He's out of there. No more creepy.
Yeah, it's like I asked for this, but I'm like, cringe.
Yes.
Jesus Christ. I'm like, I understand alcohol is involved, but I'm like, Jesus, people, please have some kind of filter. Yeah, and was he local? Like, had he been there before?
Yes.
Like a regular?
He got banned.
Not just some random.
No, he was a regular, and he got banned from Division. He got banned from like several breweries and bars around the area.
So he was a serial creep.
A serial creep, absolutely. And the worst thing was he would order beers in 5 ounces. And then he would drink it in like 2 minutes and then order another 5 ounce. Meaning, I have to go back to him like triple the amount of times than I have to go back to anybody else. And it's like, I already don't like you and you're making it worse.
That's funny. That's like, just tell me, because you'd mentioned that you dance. Like, what dance projects are you working on right now?
Well, I just finished like my very last main stage performance. I do have a performance on Tuesday, but it's just like literally in the building that we practice in, so it's not a big deal. But it's actually the performance I'm more proud of because I took part in a lot of the choreography. I hope to start doing more dance things, potentially in a business, undisclosed name that I might be front running relatively soon. Dance will be a part of that. That won't be very organized. Like dance-wise, it won't be choreographed. It'll be about healing and finding ways to move and in order to release trauma.
I kind of realized that, like, as an art form, it's kind of something that's been like a enigma. But as far as like what goes like into like, you know, the choreography, like kind of like making it more artistic versus like just, you know, jamming or like moving your body. So if you'd like to comment on that, I'm very interested. From your perspective.
So I've never been a technically skilled dancer. I've always been a big picture person and participant when we were creating choreography. This semester was the very first semester that I really created an entire like section of the choreography. And I've added 2 things, but in a technical sense, you like making things a little more professional, I guess, is kind of what you're talking about. That's not what dance is about for me.
Okay.
It really never has been. It's what it's about for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I joined dance as like I was freshman year and of college, and I was like, hey, I need an elective. Let me search through the course catalog. Then I was like, there's dance performance, and I was like, well, I'll give it a shot. And so when I started that, it was not a very professional setting.
Okay.
But it was very open to people who were new to dance. Okay. And that's something that I appreciated a lot.
Yeah.
It's something that I've used to heal myself. I've actually done a couple of projects that I was really happy about that involved dance, but they were always about something very specific, like a challenge in my life. Like one of them, I performed it and recorded it in this apartment complex, which is not the prettiest thing in the world, but it does have pretty areas, and I was going up and down the steps with this like flowy black mesh skirt, and then I was walking down the sidewalk, alluding all to me walking next to my dog who passed a couple of years ago.
I'm so sorry.
So it was a loss. A lot of people have people as their first big losses.
Yeah.
My first big loss was this dog. And I'm lucky in that way, but I connect so deeply to animals that I still cry about it. I'm tearing up right now. And it was probably 3 years ago. It was called So Be It. And I put a song in it called Amen by Amber Run. And I believe, if I remember correctly, the direct translation of Amen is So Be It. It's
from Hebrew, right?
I believe so.
Okay, interesting. That's something I was not aware of.
Yeah, so when I looked it up, I was like, that's really cool, because I was confused as to why this non-Christian band, as far as I was concerned, was singing a song about Amen.
Yeah.
But it just means like, here it is. It happened. Yeah. That's it. So be it. Yeah. And this is just me recovering from it.
That's really interesting, because I have way too many interests than anyone has any right to have. I know people like are very like diverse. I say this like with a bunch of things, but like in another life, I feel like I'd want to study like linguistics or etymology, and like kind of like I just think it's so interesting, like the way like words have come about. I just remember like as a kid, I think most people have this thought of just straight up like almost jokingly when I was like, who looked at that and it was like, that's a tree. And like it's a very like simple example of it, but like I just always had that curiosity and like wonder, because it's not just that someone like declared it's like that's the noise you're gonna make. That's, you know, a very simple way of looking at it. It's like it's very closely tied to human evolution and like how we've come as a society. It's like just how language has been traded in like different like accents. It's like all these like little like rules are just thousands of years in the making. I always think that's interesting. Just kind of breaking down the origins of words.
Do you know the phrase "cut of your jib"? I like the cut of your jib.
No, actually, I'm not familiar with that.
So it's a very old phrase that comes from sailing days. Okay. A jib is like a sail, I guess.
Yeah.
So the cut of your jib, like if you have a good cut of your jib, then your boat's nice. Then your sail's nice.
Oh, okay.
Meaning you sail well and whatnot. I just learned that a couple of days ago.
Really?
I thought that was hilarious because I'll just use it. I like the cut of your jib, and people are like, I wonder what that means, and I was like, I wonder what that means too. And my boyfriend just knew it. It was just off the top of his head. He was just like, Meh, I know this.
Yeah,
he's a trivia maniac.
Oh, okay, I see. Interesting, because it's just like there's just some things that just roll off the tongue where it's like either just inherently like that, where it's like you don't even have to know like that's where that comes from, but you're just like. It's like this, like I like your cut G, like just being. It's like that came from somewhere, but people just say it, and it's like I just put in whatever context, and then it makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
Getting back on track now, based on your previous state, as far as being more interested in choreographing, like dance and like organizing, like being like the big picture person that comes, would you still be interested in like performing, like for your art, or kind of? Obviously, like in lots of different industries, like you wear like different hats, but is that something you're looking to pursue professionally, or just kind of integrate into your music?
It could potentially be something that I pursue professionally, but if it was professional, it would not be with a dance company.
I see.
It would be on my own accord.
Okay.
And because it's once you get past college, it's super stringent on the physical attributes you need to have, how flexible you are, what skills you can do.
Yeah.
And I can't really do any of that. So if I were to continue choreographing and stuff like that, it would probably just be making videos, kind of like I did for my class that one time that we're talking about. But it is something that I'm interested in because I love it so much, and I think it's a really beautiful way to tell a story.
Yeah.
Because not using words, like, to me, is a challenge. Because words are, like, my first language. Yeah. That doesn't make sense. My first art language, like, instead of paint being my first language, like, words. It was the tying together of different phrasings and rhyme schemes and concepts and just overarching pictures. That was my first art language. And so dance is, like I said, it's a challenge for me.
Sure.
And I would like to continue challenging myself.
Absolutely. That's an awesome way of looking at it. Would you consider yourself a singer songwriter?
Yes.
Okay.
Poet as well is probably one of my top titles. I have pretty much completed my poetry book. I have over 300 poems that I've written, and I've got a poetry, I call it my poetry EP. I know that's not technically the right word, but it would be my very initial release of a poetry book. And so that's how I started. I started writing music when I was like 9. It was, the first song was rough. I don't even want to bring it up, but I was very young when I started writing music, but I never had instruments. I tried to learn guitar when I was very young. My hands were always way too small, and so I just kind of gave up on that. But then I got a ukulele when I was 18, and that's when I started really writing songs on a monthly basis. Yeah, but poet is, in my description, I guess, would be one of the top things. Singer-songwriter / poet.
Yeah, on SoundCloud, it's artist of many arts.
Yes.
I think it's something like that.
Yes, an artist of many arts. That's,
Which, I guess it's like what life's about. It's like finding like that calling and sort of figuring like what is like my main drive or like main objective. It's almost kind of like meta, because if anyone's asking themselves, it's like what is the meaning of life? in my opinion, the meaning of life is to find the meaning. Instead of being cliche as far as like, it's the journey, not the destination kind of thing. I feel like that, we talked about phrasing and idioms. It's like that's kind of one that's like lost sometimes. As instrumentalists, I'm listening to like everything as a whole, and then maybe the lyrics come to me and like keep me in like on the feelings. It's very like the opposite of a lot of things. That's where like I've, as an engineer, like struggled with songwriting. Like I know like very much like my sound. What is kind of your process there then?
Poems and songs start very differently for me. Poems generally, at least now, take very little effort. It is just writing what I feel.
Yeah.
I don't do a ton of rhyming anymore. A lot of it is free verse. So it's just like a journal entry most of the time. Songs are very intentional. And I have the opposite problem of you. I hear lyrics first. And that's what gives me the tone to a song, which can sometimes throw me off because a lot of my music sounds very sad.
Sure.
And even if I'm trying to make a happy song, it'll still sound just sad and lonely.
Sure.
And the musicality of that is the harder part for me, to make sure that the sound that I'm producing gives off the feeling I want it to give instead of just the lyrics giving the feeling.
That makes sense, because it seems like a subject matter you've thought about before, because I've listened to a decent amount of your music before, doing the podcast today. What was the name of the song? Is it Only Blue or
Shades of Blue?
Shades of Blue? Yes. Very interesting to think about that. It's that's just where it goes. Without getting too heavy, like, if it's not something you're comfortable with, like, is that just been a struggle of like, how do I like write something like positive?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure you listened to the song. I don't know if I put the lyrics on there, but the whole song is about how it's hard to write a happy song for me. The last lyric, I believe, is "You write what you know." That's what I've felt for a really long time. I was in the hospital a while back for mental issues, and the therapist, we had a family session, the therapist asked my dad, "What do you need from May? And May, what do you need from your parents?" And I didn't really know what to say, but my dad kind of made a joke, and he was like, "More happy songs would be nice." And I was like, I'm in a mental hospital right now. Like, I get that you want me to be happier.
Yeah.
But I'm using this art to express the horrible darkness that I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to make a happier song. So I wrote a song for him. It's called RBH, or Happy Song. And the lyrics are just, "This happy song is for you. I hope that you're happy too." Then the chorus is basically, "This happy song is for me. I think I'm finally going to be free from this voice in my mind. I think it's about time that I write happy songs just for me." But that didn't happen. I didn't get to write happy songs. Even that song was sad. And it's called Happy Song.
Yeah.
But Shades of Blue, it's talking about black thorns are twisting and coming up from the page, So, like, I'm writing and I'm trying to say beautiful, happy things.
Yeah.
There's just thorns growing from it. And the pen crosses out line after line after line after line.
Yeah.
But what can I say? You write what you know. So that has been my experience for a really long time. But recently, I met the love of my life. And I met a lot of really good people. And I started having a community for the first time in my life. And I've started genuinely writing happy songs. And that's why I'm so excited about my show, because it will be the first set I have, the first show that I have, that is actually primarily comprised of songs that are about happy things and hope and growth and life and love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, if it's any kind of consolation, it's like you're not alone in this. Like many artists, absolutely, it's like you write what you know in any kind of sense. You create what you know. Art's always a reflection of the world. I'm gonna butcher this quote, and so I won't like exactly quote, but there's like an idea where it's like, ideas always come from somewhere. They're just not like random like things in the ether necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it, for a lot of people, it's like, yeah, that's how they process trauma, and it's cathartic. To naysayers like that, and it's like, oh, this is all like negative. I'm like, well, not really. Like it's good to kind of just get that like out there. I'm sure you would, as a psych major, have things to say about that.
Well, yes. I've been told so many times that all my stuff is negative. And the thing is, yes, sure. When you hear it, it's like, that makes me sad. But if you're somebody that's gone through the things that I've gone through, that makes me feel known and heard.
Yeah.
That's what sad songs make me feel.
Yeah.
When I write them, like there was a song that I wrote about my dad because he wasn't around all the time when I was little, and it felt like I kept just getting left behind.
Yeah.
And so the song's called Hope in the Past Tense. It's not on anything yet. I want to record lots of other things, but I haven't yet. I haven't had the time graduating college. But once I wrote that song, I sang it a couple of times, and then literally I felt the weight and the pain and the anger and resentment just float away. Yeah. I felt it like in a moment after I'd written that and performed that song. So it is catharsis in so many ways. Yeah. There's genuine moments where you write something that you've been feeling for a long, long time, and finally you're able to feel connected in a way, but also separated from that as it's a moment in my past and something that I can move on from.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it, because you described it as like your poems, even like it's a journal. It's almost easier to say that like in a microphone with your ukulele or whatever. Like because it's especially hard when it is a particular person, like in your instance, where it's like when the person you're talking to is the subject of your trauma, it's hard. You can't like there. You almost it's really difficult to get resolution in that way. It really is cathartic. I don't know what else to say because it just like. Have you been in a studio setting before?
Kind of once before, not in a podcast sense.
I understand. Yeah, I guess I was just curious if you've been like in a studio and like record like any of your songs before.
Oh, well, not my songs, but I actually have a song that's on Spotify and Apple Music that isn't mine, and I didn't write any of it, but they wanted me as like the beginning voice on their album. Yeah. I believe it was their like very first album to release. It's an Arlington band. PTO is what they go by. Okay. I think the name of the song is PTO. Well, the name isn't PTO. The name is Neverland. Okay. Yes. I think so. Yeah. And it's PTO with me. And so I'm the starting vocals of that, and that was the only time I've ever really been in a studio setting. Okay. It was really cool. Yeah. But I don't have the capacity to set something like that up myself, at least not at this very moment in time. Sure.
No, I completely understand. Like it's daunting. It's a pain. But with that all being said, are you looking to publish your book of poems?
Yes.
Yeah.
I've had a goal since I was like 16 to publish before I'm 25. Okay. I'm about to turn 23. Right. I have like literally the setup and order that I want my poems in. I'm probably going to get my friend, he's a really good artist, graduated from Abilene Christian University as a graphic designer. Yeah. He's so talented, and I really want to get him to do some art on it. Yeah. And that's pretty much the only thing I have left to do other than actually publish. So I'm excited for that. But yeah, I totally want to publish. I think I'm going to call it Home, or Searching for Home, I believe is what. Because all of my poems, not all of them, but a lot of my poems have the word home in them. And the concept of that has been such a long process for me. And I might start crying because I will start crying. I grew up feeling separated from my family because my house was split. So I would spend every other weekend with my dad, and I always had a bag packed. So I didn't feel like I had a home anywhere. I started to find that when I was like 16 with my ex-boyfriend and his family. They were very, very kind to me, showed me some of the first unconditional love that I've genuinely felt from human beings. And so trying to find home, I feel like, really describes my poetry and my emotional journey. Yeah. Because home isn't about a place for me. It's about some group of people or some semblance of something that feels like I can be myself in it. And completely, unabashedly, is that a word? Yeah. Unabashedly be me. And that's been hard for me for a really long time because I feel like I'm kind of a weirdo, which is become a great thing. And I'm actually happy that I can say that with confidence, that I'm freaking weird. Yeah. And it's cool.
Everyone has a weird side. I don't care who you are, like if you're the most normal, blah, 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 blah. I'm of the opinion that everyone at some point in their life, it unfortunately happens to people too early, but eventually in life, you're going to go through just this one traumatic experience that will make you the person you're going to be for the rest of your life. It may happen like way later for some people, but that's just, to me, I think just a reality where you're just, most people who have that, it's just trying to find a place you can call home. I feel like I've been struggling since I've moved out to find somewhere I can call home,
Absolutely.
And that's a lot of like life's journey is like finding your people. So I hope, through this podcast that people can find that and that it helps in some kind of way, because we do get pretty deep. We almost sometimes like hardly even talk about music, but that's so much of it. And want to ask you your opinions and thoughts and feelings as far as music and psychology, and like how closely related like those are, just art in psychology, like just your perspective like on that.
I mean, closely related. They're one and the same for me. Psychology has been a part of my life since I was probably 13 or 14 when I started going to therapy. Ever since then, every time a therapist or a psychiatrist told me there's these neurotransmitters in your brain that are maybe not fully working the way that they need to, and I was like, wait, it's not just because I'm me. It's actual things that are happening in my brain and things that have happened to me that have caused me to store trauma in my body. It's not just me. I'm not just a shithead. I'm not just stupid or sad. It's actual things that are affecting me. And I think that has so much to do with art, because most artists are sad or have been sad or will be sad. But I think that that's a really big part of humanity in general. And the way that we connect with each other is through darkness and finding light together. Yeah. And realizing that not everybody comes from a bright place. Yeah. And one of my poems is about how it doesn't matter There's no superheroes or villains cry and heroes lie, and hurt people.
Yes.
And there's no black or white. Everything comes from somewhere.
Yeah.
We have to remember that almost everyone comes from a place different than us, and most of those places are dark and scary. Finding solace in being together in sadness is just art. I think that's just art, plain and simple.
Yeah. I think, do you want to talk about some of the music that we had shared?
Yeah.
Beforehand?
Mine?
Song. Yes.
Drop, Stop, and Roll by Rainbow Kitten Surprise. It's their newest song.
Really?
Yes.
That tune, I have to say, because like we do like kind of like very like light analysis and just talk about like our feelings a bit. So I know that's something you've probably been on repeat for you. I'm assuming.
Yes.
I just like it's just fun,
Mm-hmm.
which is really interesting considering like what like we're talking about. Yeah, like I love the folk song like quality that they have. It's really interesting because like I'm very like, you know, my tastes are both eclectic and niche some at the same time. And I feel like a lot of people can like in the days of streaming can relate to that. I've kind of come to appreciate like artists like Bob Dylan like more recently.
I love Bob Dylan.
I really I've just seen like really like interesting like deconstructions like of his career and the way like he lived his life. I mean, it doesn't sound like he's passed already.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just like like on like the vibe. For me, like music, a lot of it's like just a feeling. Sounds a lot like are you familiar with Beach House? Sorry,
Beach
wrote on my nose.
House. No, I don't think so.
Artist. I'll have to share that with you then.
Okay.
One thing interesting that I kind of got is like kind of defining like the genre like indie, you know, as far as like what independent music sounds like, because I'm always an advocate of like working like towards like your strengths. Obviously, you know what you know. I don't know how many times we've said that already, but it's like you know what you know, and it's like for indie bands, there's just this inherent out of like, okay, what do we have? Like, what can we make the most out of whatever? I don't know. That's kind of like what I got out of it. Like, tell me more.
Out of that song specifically? Yeah. Rainbow Kitten Surprise has been in my, I don't know if wheelhouse is the right word, but it's been on my radar since I was like 14 or 15.
Really?
They're one of my favorite bands of all time, and they have a lot of really dark songs. One of my favorite songs, one of their most popular songs, is How to Friend, Love, and Free Fall. Okay. And the very first line of that song is called to the devil and the devil did come. Okay. Said to the devil, devil, do you like drums? Do you like cigarettes, dominoes, rum? He said only sundown, Sundays, Christmas. Anyway. Nice. It's a great song, and there's a lot of very like intricate lyrics that they use. Yeah. And a lot of metaphors, but I like that song that I played you, or that you played for me, because it's not sad. Yeah. It's about music. Yeah. It's the lyrics were Barry taught you how to rock and roll, so like Barry Manilow. And I love that. I think it's kind of, I've been looking for happier songs. All my liked songs on my playlist for so long were so dark and sad and lonely in some way or another. And so I've been trying to fill my music, my playlists with happier, lighter songs, with vibes that I can roll down the windows in the summer and just dance to. And that's what that song is for me. It's not a sad song. It's not terribly touching. Sure. It's just fun and light and still meaningful. Yeah. Because it's got a history to it. Mm-hmm. I think it's the band that makes me love it so much. And all the freaking harmonies, dude. Those harmonies are beautiful. Yeah. They have that in every single song of theirs. Really? Just fantastic harmonies. Ela. It's very well produced. Like, I love it. Yeah. The band is actually really cool, too. Just as kind of a side note, you and I were talking about pronouns earlier before we started the podcast, and Rainbow Kitten Surprise, rainbow is one of the words in their band name, so you might guess that that's a little bit gay or queer in general.
Yeah.
So the lead singer is named Ela.
Okay.
And she just came out as trans like a year and a half ago, maybe something like that.
Yeah.
So I think I got to see them in concert.
Yeah.
And one of their guitarists, their name is Charlie. They're non-binary. So they've got a trans woman who's freaking got a beautiful voice and is just rocking the stage. And then Charlie in the back with their fucking like, it's fantastic. It was great. And so Bozzy is like, Bozzy and Ela started the band together, and they're the ones that do all the harmonies.
Okay.
So
interesting.
I love both of their voices, and I think they combine beautifully.
Yeah, especially like when you have a good like dynamic like that, because there's so many like bands where you just it's like just tag along. Like it's good to have like a main creative force, like someone who can like. Because usually, like a producer will fill that role of like wrangling in like a group of like artists or musicians to kind of get like a cohesive like sound or vision.
Right.
But yeah, it's like indie bands like really just benefit from having like that dynamic. I think all music is collaborative, obviously.
Oh yeah.
But that's like a big part of why that's appealing.
Yeah. Speaking of indie. Just in general, would you call my music indie?
Yeah, a bit because we've like debated a bit on the show of like defining genres. Like in the very first episode, Jesse Katz is like, it's I'm gonna quote him. It stuck with me. It is a fool's errand for marketing purposes. Like a lot of like the streaming stuff, like all of that jazz. It's like it's for categorizational purposes. Because I think I said on the show that I asked you if you'd consider yourself a singer songwriter. That's more like what I hear. Yeah, I hear that more like the folky quality. Because again, it is funny because that's why I brought it up because it's like, well, indie is like independent, and I'm like, what really? How do you categorize that? It's like that sound, and I challenge you, the viewer, and you, Mae, as far as like maybe like almost like alternative, because I would say like because that has a whole different connotation to it as well, and just we talked about words meaning various things throughout like time, but it feels like indie is almost like it's almost just like a qualifier where it's like we do not fit in with. Like because I take so much issue. Like I don't hate pop. I sometimes like the way I talk. It makes it sound like I hate pop music as a genre. I do not. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. To me, everyone at home is free to disagree. When your main goal is like to hit like the charts and be like the biggest, like I want everyone in the world to hear it. It's not impossible for good and meaningful music to make it, obviously, because stuff does. One of my favorite bands is Linkin Park. I've talked about on the show. To me, what makes them interesting is that they found ways to take what would be considered underground music for a mainstream audience. You know,
21 Pilots kind of did that too.
Yeah, and actually, Chester Bennington in an interview shortly before he'd passed had referenced them like quite a bit as like like a more recent inspiration.
Oh, that's so cool.
Which is cool, like kind of hearing that connection because to make the comparison, but it's like alternative media, where it's like this is indie, this is like going against the grain in a purposeful way. Would you describe yourself as indie though? To throw the question back at you.
That's a great question, and kind of the reason I asked you is because I have trouble defining my genre.
Sure.
Because it's just me and a ukulele. So I was kind of asking you because I don't really know all that well, but what I do kind of mention to people is the term bedroom pop.
Oh,
Are you aware of that genre?
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't think I've used it or heard it in that context, but yeah, absolutely, for sure.
Yeah, so like Cave Town, if you've ever heard of them, they're all very small. But Cave Town, Chloe Moriando, Claro is probably the most popular one of them all. But they're all soft vibes, usually with a beat at the back, which I don't usually have in my music. But it's soft. The lyrics are emphasized in importance. It's a lot of raw vocals. So that's kind of where I align myself, the raw vocal side and the lyricist side. Yeah. So like maybe an indie alt bedroom pop mixture.
Sure. All these like yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't know.
That makes sense. That fits. I like it.
Cool.
Yeah. I really do like enjoy, because like, you know, after you handed me like the flyer for your show that you're doing, it's Grand Illusion that you're playing with on May 13th.
Yes.
So
7 p.m.
Yes, at Dr. Jekyll's Beer Lab. So if I get this out in time, you know, go ahead and check it out. It ought to be a good time. I'm gonna be there. It'll be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, we're talking about music being a challenge, and like I find the most rewarding things are like challenging and like listening to music, and like it is like very purposeful. Like it's like very like gentle with the subject matter, because you can hear like the melancholy. Yeah, like I appreciate your approach and like a lot of that, because it's hard to, you know, when it's voice and ukulele, it's like, okay, like I know lots of people that do that. It's like it's hard to make that like interesting and meaningful, and it just I just get that sense from your music, and it makes so much sense, like, you know, be and talking to you now. Anything else you'd like to talk about with your song pick?
I don't know. Just check out Rainbow Kitten Surprise in general. They're really good. Their lyrics are great. If you like good harmony, if you like good guitar, they've got some incredible riffs. And if you like a good show too, like they're coming to Dallas in November, actually. Really? Yeah.
God, like I talk about like trying to like narrow down interest. I'm like, there's so many good shows, and I'm like, I want to support like all of my local artists, all of like everybody. And I'm just like, man, there's not enough like time to experience like all of the things that I'm just like, I can sit here and like we can like list just go down like forever and ever and ever, which I would appreciate. I don't know if everyone else at home would though, you know.
Yeah.
To get to the next pick though, I showed Mae a song from Halsey's most recent record, If I Can't Have Love, I Want Power. We'd listened to Bells and Santa Fe. Not one of the singles from it, like definitely like a more like niche pick from the album, but something that I quite appreciate. But without going into it too much, what were your thoughts and feelings?
I like to listen, or I like to read lyrics. Yeah. That's what I was doing while the song was playing. It seems like it's about kind of being with a lot of different people, but feeling empty. Yeah. And just leaving those spaces feeling empty. And I relate to that because I did go through a phase of one of my favorite songs is called Castle in the Sand. I will be playing it. The song Castle in the Sand starts off, how many people does it take to be alone without being lonely? Yeah. So I feel like that's similar vibe to what that song was about. Yeah. Because I did go through a phase during COVID where I was like, I need to be alone. I need to be independent. I'm a strong woman, you know. But then I just like went and slept in a bunch of people's beds because I didn't want to be alone, but I wanted to be alone. Yes. It's a weird. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but I think people will get it. Oh yeah. That's what it sounded like to me, and re-listening to the title of the album, I think that connects very deeply. If I can't have love, I want power. Yeah. So I mean, sex is power in so many ways, and I think that maybe what she was talking about. She wanted to just kind of I'll hold you in the dark, I think was one of the lyrics, or maybe I could hold you in the dark. I can pull it up while you're talking. Something along those lines, and it speaks to the loneliness, but also maybe the power that sex gives you, where you can just stop in and give somebody love and affection in a very short amount of time and then leave and feel maybe powerful in a way, because women being the powerful ones in sex, I feel like, is a relatively new concept. But it's something that has really empowered me in a lot of ways. Because I've dealt with probably a lot of the stuff that Halsey's dealt with, which is sexual assault, sexual harassment, all of that stuff that takes power away from you. And so if you're able to regain that power in some way, I think that's positive. But maybe that's not fully the message. I would like to know your thoughts on what that song means. You probably listened to it a lot more times than I have.
Yeah, it's something I like really had been wanting to revisit because I listened to it when it first came out a bit and was very, very interested, like very captivated, but just hadn't. I think a lot of people can relate to this where when something new comes out, they'll listen to it over and over and then it's like, okay, let's shelve it and then we'll come back and be able to process that. And this album, like, again, a lot of my favorite music like is a challenge. Halsey was someone that I had kind of misunderstood, and which is really interesting because that's, I think, what a lot of like this record and their previous one has been about. If you know like their story, the themes of this album, like, it's actually because I haven't kept up with it because I know there's some like videos, but I know they had mentioned making a film or visuals to go along with it at some point. The album in its, let me like back it up. So what I mean is that I'd been of the opinion before of like, people talk to me. It's like, oh, like, like just seeing like, their name come up before and other things. Like, I think it was like that Chain Smoker song that they're featured on. I was like, well, and then like other like tracks I'd heard like more like commercially beautiful voice. I just didn't appreciate the songwriting. This album in particular, they wanted to go in a brand new direction to kind of like get away from that because I think it was their debut. In a lot of interviews that I was watching like around this time, they mentioned it's like, that people did not understand that it was satirical. That album in particular, it's a lot of the themes are very satirical, and I think the mainstream media had completely just taken it as like, asking about like branding. It's like, okay, another like, female singer songwriter. And I just think ever since then they've been trying to break away from that perception. Because that was me. Because that was me. I was just like, okay, whatever. It's another like Miley Cyrus or like I can't think of someone else right now, but just like another whatever. Really, like what had caught my attention is that they had reached out, like, it was recorded during the pandemic. It is produced by some of my biggest inspirations, but Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. What an interesting collaboration. So I'll get more specific like on this song, but the context of the album, I don't remember like the full details of the situation, but they were pregnant and like, expecting. Most of it's kind of dealing with like the struggles because it really is like a roller coaster of emotions. It's the second, song in the track list. The introduction is called The Tradition, which, kind of lays out the groundwork like pretty obviously as far as like basically just like of like, traditions as far as like, roles for women more or less. And, so interesting, like hearing like your perspective, like listening to that for the first time and coming at it from a different angle. Cause I from my point, I just had gotten all the loneliness and like hopelessness and like a lot of like the soundscape, trying to find like comfort through sex, just through like finding like, that just like from one person to like another, like trying to find intimacy. And I couldn't imagine like I feel like it's really easy for me to say because I feel like I have a lot of strong female like role models like in my life, but where the problem lies is that many men, boys, what have you, don't, like, just because of years of history and like just being repressed, like
Yeah.
in that way, like as being like in a position of power. And that's a lot of the themes like I that are in the album is because the big track, the big single is like I'm not a woman, I'm a god.
Yeah.
That's a big song. Because that's towards the album because it is very like I understand like why they would want to produce a film of it because it is very like cinematic. So Bells in Santa Fe, like I hear like all the isms of like a Trent Reznor production with their voice on it. It's very light. It's just like atmospheric. Like there's that percussive like synth that's like this like nagging, like it comes and like goes. You'd asked me like what I'd thought like their story, like kind of knowing more of that. What does that mean to you?
There's a couple of songs that I really like from theirs. I think Hurricane is one. Yeah, where like people are talking about them on the train and saying like don't waste your pretty face like me. So that always kind of that song in general, being a hurricane in general, I think spoke to me. There's also a specific song that I pulled up right here, the lyrics to. It's Nightmare by Halsey.
Yeah.
One of the most impactful lyrics I think that connected me to them initially when I first started listening was about body dysmorphia and just hating the body that you were born in and grew into or whatever. So the lyric is stared in the mirror and punched it to shatters, collected the pieces and picked out a dagger. I've pinched my skin in between my two fingers and wished I could cut some parts off with some scissors. So it's like super dark, and I love the lyrics to that in general. I love the boldness of it. I wanted to bring more of that into my music as well. And I was scared of that for a long time because my family was very much, like I said, with my dad, very much make more happy songs. And I was like, but this is beautiful. Yeah. That sentiment is beautiful and it connects human beings with each other. And I think just in general, without really knowing all that much, like I haven't really listened to a lot of Halsey interviews. Yeah. Just listening to their music has always been connecting. There's power behind it. Yeah. There's sadness and shame. There's a mixture. There's love and lust and fire and emptiness and all of the above. And I think it really encompasses the human experience, especially for a feminine presenting person in general, and an artist as well in the public eye. But I'm reading more of these lyrics, and like I was saying, with the power along with the darkness, there's no, I won't smile, but I'll show you my teeth. Yeah. I really love that. Yeah. Because, and even Hurricane is similar to that. And this song and the album, just the title of it, the power behind it is really important. And women finding power, or feminine people finding power in the world, is something that I have been looking for a long time. Sure. And a lot of the pop culture, like Miley Cyrus, Wrecking Ball video, when that initially came out, I never really connected with it because I wasn't confident in my body like that. Yeah. And Halsey being not confident in their body or themselves in a lot of ways, but also growing through that and showing strength and showing power, I think is one of the coolest dissonance that I've seen in an artist. Yeah. And it's dissonance, but it's the kind that sounds beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, because it really, like a lot of... Have you also seen the film Hereditary?
Yes, I've seen part of it.
Part of it. I've talked to friends about this where it's like to me, like horror is more of like a medium than a genre itself, where it's just kind of like confronting these... It's not literally the monster, but it's like kind of like the scary things. And but I bring it up because it's related to Halsey's most recent album. and the themes of like the fear of like childbirth and child labor and just like those fears and anxiety, like Hereditary, that film in particular is a lot about the scares of like, more sort of the later stages of like having like, kids who are 20 something like now or being a parent for a while and just like kind of those regrets. Not necessarily regrets of, that relationship, but it's like, well, we're gone wrong or that kind of thing. And just, it's a lot about like, the title Hereditary is like it's really about both family trauma and then like, as far as like, mental illness and like passing that down and like those fears of bringing another person into this world. And I hear a lot of that in Can't Have Love, I Want Power. Cause just even looking at like the cover, it's them, in, very like regal, like, I don't know if I showed you like the cover, but
I saw it, yeah.
And the censored version, they have to cover up like her breasts. Unfortunately, that people are so sensitive to that for its biological purpose of nurturing.
Right, which America is like one of the only countries that actually sees breasts as genitals instead of just like a feeding mechanism for children.
Our friend group is like had a like not a debate, but just a discussion of like, it's like our breasts a fetish, kind of thing. I'm like, what interesting to think about, because like, the way we went down this rabbit hole is like, foot fetishes. I'm just like, well, like why that even, where it's just like just a body part that's not like about, intercourse.
Yeah.
And then we're like, well, it's like breasts really aren't either necessarily.
Exactly.
I mean, nice. I'm not gonna pretend like it's not, but yeah.
Yeah. I actually have like a psychological thing on the point of fetishes.
Interesting. Please.
Yeah. So the foot fetish, it's the most common fetish of humans in general.
Like running the numbers,
Genuinely,
okay.
It is the most common fetish.
Interesting.
Yes. The reason for that, hypothesized, but based in scientific fact, is on the brain. You've got your little lumps, right? Yeah. And in a section of the brain, if you just cut down a quarter of it, basically, genitals are right next to the sensors. Like, this is all sensory stuff, like the way that you connect it. So your genitals in general are connected very closely with your feet. So sometimes those wires get crossed.
Okay, interesting.
And that's what creates foot fetishes a lot of the time.
I'm only laughing because I'm like, oh wow, it's not that simple, but it's like, it makes sense.
It does.
Explaining that.
It does make a lot of sense. And the other way that fetishes usually come about is through shame. When you're a child, like if you're like 3 years old, you don't have no idea what like things are, but you walk into your mom's room and you grab her bra and she freaks out, and now bras are like this sacred object that you can't touch, and that becomes a sexual fetish. Same thing happens with shoes, like women's shoes, like if you go into your mom's closet and you're trying on the shoes and your dad's like, that's for girls, like stop it,
So it's almost like demonizing things makes stuff more of a problem.
Exactly.
I say it very sarcastically for everyone in the back. It's almost like demonizing things makes, wow.
No, absolutely. It's literally a psychological phenomenon. I'm not pulling shit out of my ass. That's actually what happens.
No, so. I like that. I loved Psych. I kind of almost asked you rhetorically earlier. So much of being an artist is like just understanding people.
Yeah, absolutely. Understanding people, understanding yourself, being introspective. I think that's one of the things that makes me a really good artist is how well I am connected with how I feel, why I feel that way, what other people made me feel, why they feel that way, and why each person does the actions that causes other people's pain or misfortune.
Yeah, I appreciate the record that Halsey had done.
Absolutely.
Like a couple. I'm like I really, if it isn't already, I hope the film gets made.
Yeah.
I definitely could see it because I loved we talked about Pink Floyd and The Wall. Have you ever seen the movie for that?
I haven't.
It's so hard to find. It's not streaming anywhere.
Ugh.
I was only able to watch it because my dad had the VHS. Like there's a DVD copy that's been out of print, but it's just like you can't. It's so hard to find. But it's
Maybe I can torrent it.
I don't personally know where to, but I'm sure it's possible.
Potential, yeah.
But it's so good.
Cool.
I mean if you it's not a 1-to-1 with the album. There's actually some stuff from the final cut, which is, if you know anything about that record, the final cut is there's a few like album like from like bigger artists like this where it's like that enough music during the writing process to make another album. So then they did. So there was a lot of B-sides or other things from the Wall session that made it onto that album. So I forget which track in particular, but they play with a track order. It's mostly the audio from the album, but then there's there's really no dialogue, just some stuff in between here, like almost like sound design choices. Yeah, that in particular, like I see a lot of parallels. One of my favorite records of all time is The Downward Spiral. Sonically, it's very different, but just that vulnerability is really powerful, and I appreciate it a lot.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for listening this far into the episode. Just wanted to pass along a note from my editor, Gerald, for clarification. During this discussion, Mae and I were unsure if we were going to record their song Knuckles on the Pavement feature at the beginning of this episode, so the following conversation was under the assumption I'd feature their song Bright and Sunny instead. So go listen to it. I thought the conversation was still very meaningful. I decided to keep it in anyways. Thank you all so much for the support. If you've enjoyed this episode and the podcast as a whole, follow and subscribe. That'd mean the world to me. We've just recently launched our Patreon page, so consider that as well if you're able. Thank you once again for listening. Now, back to the show. So at the beginning of the podcast, I always feature music from my guests. So you'll probably just heard the song Bright and Sunny. Do you want me to talk about it first?
Yeah, go for it.
Song? I definitely related to it because I kind of got especially now that I have the official lyrics pulled up, there's that stand up of kind of losing track of time. That's a huge, especially in the last 3 years. It's I feel like with the pandemic, I've lost all sense of whatever. And when you're definitely going through a struggle and not knowing night from day, falling asleep with the lights on.
It's the first line. I fell asleep with the lights on again last night.
That you really paint a picture with your words, because especially when you're telling me about some of your poetry and citing stuff. It's I stopped picking flowers a few years back because when I did, they would die and their petals turned to black. That's pretty common. I think a lot of people can relate as far as not if you love something let it go, but there's an idea of when you pick a flower, it's it's kind of doomed to die eventually if you take it out of it of its habitat. I guess with some of your insight, what does it mean to you personally?
So this song is very close to my heart. My best friend, she attempted suicide right before I wrote this song. And it's about her. She's bright and sunny. So I wrote her a letter before I wrote the song about her being bright and sunny, because she is just this beautiful piece of art, and she's also an artist, and she writes poetry a lot and songs and paints, and she brings so much light into the world. And it's about people who bring so much light, but who feel so dark inside. Yeah. So, the very last line of the thing you mentioned, I stopped picking flowers a few years back. That whole stanza is actually a poem I wrote that's adjacent to the song.
I see.
So I meant to, in the final recording, I was going to just read that as a poem after I finished the song. They're both very similar concepts, but the last stanza of the actual song part, Dear Bright and Sunny, I've been thinking it through. Do you suppose the sun has dark inside it too? 'Cause sometimes the brightest stars are just about to fall. And well, if that's you, then give me a call next time. So it's about she's so bright, and how like when a star is about to burst and it gets really bright, and that's, I guess, what that verse was about, and what the whole song is about is if you're there and you are shining bright, but inside you feel not alive, just call me next time before you make that decision. It was a very painful moment in my life, but she is still with me, and that's all I can really ask for.
Yeah. When you were going through that, like, do you start with kind of a prompt or those feelings, like when you are writing, or just you just as a songwriter you just do it instinctively and it just happens and you contextualize it later?
Well, a lot of the times I'll get just a phrase in my head, and that will sit there and accumulate other ideas attached to it for a long time, and then when it happens, it just happens, and it just bursts out onto the page. So that's basically what happened with this song, because I was sad too. Like, I was not in a good place mentally, and not just because that she had done that, but because of my own stuff. So there's even a line in there, in the chorus is, sometimes a mirror doesn't tell you the truth, and sometimes those lies come from deep inside of you. And I know that it's hypocritical of me to say, but love, you're beautiful, and please won't you stay? Because I would say the terrible things to myself that I'm sure she was also saying to herself. And so I felt hypocritical in writing the song, almost because I was just begging her to stay, even though all I wanted to do was go. And I think that happens a lot with people that are sad together. Yeah. We're like, but I love you so much, and I really, really want you here. And I know what it's like to feel like you don't want to be alive. I genuinely do. I've spent a lot of my life in that mindset. And, but I think all of us that have felt that way are really good at telling other people not to. And we like to do that a lot. We're like, I'm really sad and I want to die, but please don't die because you're awesome. And we just do that to each other, you know? We don't see the beauty in ourselves.
Not you specifically, but people like that, you want someone to say that to you.
Right.
You know, that's what love and respect is caring about someone else like you would care about yourself. And when you don't care about yourself, you want that love and respect for someone to tell you. And you know, going through that experience, it's like it is humbling to just stop and be like, it's like, well, when I had my struggle, I would have wanted someone to have said that, you know.
Absolutely.
So I really appreciate you sharing that. I have one more thing before we finish. What do you, does someone like me who struggles like to understand like lyricism and songwriting on the first pass, like I really have to listen to something over and over to like really understand it. And when I do, it's like it's that's to me the most rewarding thing about art is just having that deeper understanding with someone without having to really get to know them. Mm-hmm. What do you think subconsciously, if you're I'd felt those things without really realizing it? I don't know. That was more of a statement than a question. Maybe I should rephrase that, but do you know what I'm saying?
Do you mean that you felt through the noise of the song
a little bit, or like almost
the
like
concept without knowing the exact wording that I would use, kind of?
It's like those feelings, because like that's what I would associate with depression.
Yeah.
You know, is like a lot of the things that I was fixating on. It's like more the effects, you know, because without outright saying this is what the song is about, and it's like, you know, I'm really trying to find like a good question like out of this, but it's like,
I think I kind of get what you're saying.
Yeah.
If I can try to comment on that. My best friend is the same exact way
Sure.
that you are. They hear sounds before they hear words.
yeah,
That has put a challenge on me to make my songs feel the way that I want them to feel without shoving lyrics down people's throats.
sure.
Because I've never been a super like talented musician in the sense of instruments. I think to psychoanalyze you, maybe the reason that you don't hear lyrics initially is just because that's not all that music is. There is a huge amount of impact that goes into the specific sounds and vibrations and frequencies that cause your brain to feel certain things.
Yeah.
And so, as a challenge to you, maybe, potentially just on the first go, maybe with a new song, on the first go, like, read it with the lyrics.
Yeah.
Like, listen to it as you're reading the lyrics.
Yeah.
And see if that changes your perspective on the song to start with. Because some artists, like you said, Halsey, you didn't really identify as much with them at the beginning.
Yeah.
For me, if I were to look at those lyrics, while all of her songs have very, very intricate, small details in them that I feel like I also put in my music, and I think those are the little golden eggs that we want people to find. It's the heart of our music, is those small little details that put the story together.
I think when we were talking earlier, because I mean, that makes sense. It's like a lot of where I struggle, where I'm just like, I feel like everyone's kind of said how I feel already, and there's not a unique way of doing that. And that's where I'm like, how do you say the same? I hate repeating myself. How do you say the same thing over and over and get it to mean something?
Have you ever had a day that felt like the water dripping down a window pane?
Sure, but I actually, well, it depends on your connotation of that, because I actually quite like rainy days like that, or at least that mood.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Like just having days that feel like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely, 100%.
So that's how you describe it, because you just, at least to me, I just take things in nature.
Word association.
Kind of, yeah. But the fact that you can take this image in your mind of a window pane having the water droplets on it and dripping down, and the clouds outside and the kind of slight darkness to it.
Yeah.
You being able to take that and be like, there was a day or a moment that I felt the way that image makes me feel.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I do music.
Yeah.
I take specific things or moments in life that everybody sees or has and take the feelings out of that, because I'm like, that's what this feels like.
Yeah.
Shades of Blue. That's what that felt like.
Yeah.
Sitting on my balcony, just listening to the world, listening to the birds, trying to be happy, trying to write a song that was beautiful, but the leaves on the tree are falling.
I see.
You know?
Yeah.
And so it gives all of those things, those small details about the environment and about Earth, I think give the imagery that it takes to describe, I hate this, in a more eloquent and detailed and maybe personal way.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
I really appreciate that. It's always an exchange on the show, and I really appreciate you being here today and being on the podcast. I hope our conversation was fruitful for you as much as it was for me, and hopefully everyone else listening to it as well.
Well, thank you for having me. I genuinely appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Where can everyone find your music and find you?
Currently, I'm on SoundCloud. Mae Byrd, Mae Byrd is my name. So honestly, if you just type that into Google, you can find me. And SoundCloud is where I'm posting most of my music right now. But very soon, hopefully, I'll get some recordings done and put a full EP on Spotify and Apple Music and stuff.
My name is Sijlent. I'm not going to spell it out this time, but if you know, you know. Thank you guys so much for being here today. Look forward to seeing you all in the next one. Thanks, man.
Yeah, absolutely.